It's Wingin' It Wednesday, driven by Service Chevrolet Cadillac.
Feel the thunder. Lightning and the thunder.
7:13 now at News Talk 96.5 KPEL. Hey, I put some new music, by the way, in for the Ross Report. You'll start hearing it today. Hey, good morning, guys. Welcome to our panelists.
Good morning.
Wednesday. Warren, really? You come across to me as someone who would have one of those actual clocks to wake you up, not a phone alarm. That's not an insult. I'm just saying.
That, it is
Does
an
it? No,
insult.
come on. Warren seems like the type saying, I'm not depending on the iPhone. Steve Jobs is out to get me. The ghost of Steve Jobs doesn't
He has
want
that
me.
one reliable chicken.
Yes. More like the Steve Jobs doesn't want you to wake up to express your views on Wingin' It Wednesday. So, anyway.
What did Steve Jobs say was one of the most enlightening things he ever did?
Acid.
Very good. See?
Wow.
So Warren, you're saying you and Steve Jobs are actually one. We didn't realize
We
that.
didn't realize that. And
No, I never dropped acid.
okay, you sure about that?
I've done less illegal drugs than anyone in this studio.
I am so proud. I'm so proud of you.
You don't know how
He
boring
never
I am,
dropped
though,
the
Warren.
acid. He just picked it up and did it. I'm just kidding.
So the topic at hand,
Look at him laughing.
But you know what? The
There's
more
some
we hear
truth
about
to
it,
that.
I think he could have been a member of the Merry Pranksters with Ken Kesey. I
I'm
definitely
telling you.
do.
What?
You would have fit right in with the Merry Pranksters. Y'all remember?
I don't know who that is.
Nobody knows the Merry Pranksters. Ken Kesey, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. I knew that.
I did not like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
You
Association.
really didn't like that book?
Oh man, that was a great book and movie.
No, I did not.
I thought the book was fascinating. I did enjoy the movie, but it was creepalicious. Let me just put it that way.
So let's
All
move
right,
on to
Stafford.
the topic. Stafford, your thoughts on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
How did we get off on this?
Everyone in this room flew over that
Because
cuckoo's
Warren
nest.
is a Merry Prankster.
Okay, so the NFL kneeling controversy, it still rages on, folks on different sides of what happened, how it happened. Are they going to watch? Are they not? We now hear that some local companies are responding to it. Stafford, we'll start with you this week. What are your thoughts? Where are we? And is this something that's actually going to last, or is it just going to kind of be over soon?
So, Colin Kaepernick has won. Let me just start off by saying that. So if y'all don't know his story, Colin sat for, I think, 3 games before so the people even noticed, right? So he sat for 2. Nobody really said anything. 3rd game comes around. Everybody notices. They get angry. And a long snapper in the NFL, who's a former Green Beret, I think, or former Navy SEAL, wrote an open letter to him saying, hey, we find that it's disrespectful to soldiers, right? And so Colin said, well, hey, why don't you come talk to me? Let's sit down and talk, which, hats off to the guy, right? Because open communication is what is going to make the world a better place, right? So the guy, they go, they sit down, they talk, they get done, and at the end of the conversation, Colin has agreed to kneel in reverence to the soldiers that died, right?
Instead of sitting.
Sitting. And that what he told me, he said, I don't feel that I'm going to stand for the flag until the country is in the place where I think it gives everybody equal rights, right? So he said, point blank, this is about police brutality, and this is about equal rights for all races,
So I
okay?
think- yeah.
So the former Navy SEAL gets done, and he goes, I understand why he's kneeling. He goes, and I hope that he'll allow me to stand next to him when he feels that he's ready to stand.
Stand again.
So while you may not agree with the way that they're doing it, there's a false narrative out there right now that they are protesting the anthem, right? I don't think there's a single guy out there who's protesting the anthem. I believe that they are protesting racial disparity and police brutality. This was going away. There was less than 10 people doing it 2 weeks ago until...
And Colin Kaepernick's not on a team.
And Colin Kaepernick's unemployed, right? Until one idiot in D.C. opened his mouth about it, And now he is unified. Listen, if you thought Trump was going to unify people, you were right? He was either going to unify them for him or unify them against him, and he successfully unified. I think it was over 250 people kneeled, right? And then there was this false narrative that the owner of the Dallas Cowboys was going to fire anybody that kneeled. He was out there with them. And look, hats off for Dallas to figure out how to do it without doing it during the anthem, right? Because I think that that's a phenomenal way for these guys to show some unity on this message.
Warren, the question really becomes, can nonviolent demonstrations like this one really affect change? Are people talking about the actual start of it anymore?
That was a beautiful story, Stafford. I enjoyed that. Total crock, but I enjoyed it. You know, I go to the old narrative that it says small minds discuss people, average minds discuss events, great minds discuss ideas. And what we're talking about here are people and events that have nothing to do really with reality. You know, it's not about the Constitution. It's not about the national anthem. You did say it's about this country. And they want to protest this country because it's imperfect. Well, by God, name me one that's not. You know, last night, late yesterday evening, I talked to a Vietnamese gentleman, and he said, you know, I'm an American citizen. I was not born here. He said, but I don't know why these people have to disrespect this nation and that flag. By God, he said, they need to look at that flag one time, and they need to understand what those red stripes stand for on that flag. And it stands for all the blood that was shed to not only establish this country, but for the rights that they have to live the way they live. You know, this group, the National Socialists, the people that the left holds revere, the progressives, you know, which are socialists. The Antifa group, just the other day in Austin, Texas, were out there with flags of the former Soviet Union when they're masked. They're the modern-day Klan, and they are attacking the police and the people who were nonviolent protesters. They were attacking them. You know, why aren't they outraged? Why aren't they outraged, Stafford, over this income inequality? Well, we got a group of people who are billionaires on the backs of the taxpayers. They go out there and the taxpayers build these stadiums. They pay the notes on it, and when they get through paying the notes on it, who owns it? The owners of these clubs. And you got these multimillionaires that the taxpayers put up those stadiums. The taxpayers give them multiple billions of dollars a year. They're a nonprofit. The NFL is a nonprofit organization.
Formerly a nonprofit, not still a nonprofit.
When did they do that?
A couple of years ago.
About 2 years ago.
All right. Well, they were for a long time. But they have enjoyed breaks that nobody else gets. They enjoy a lifestyle. Ross Perot said it best. These sports teams, the Federal Reserve said they are a net loss to most every city economically. But he said they bring in some really good jobs to build those stadiums, and after that, what do you have? A handful of millionaires and a bunch of jobs of people selling hot dogs and beer. That's economic development. I say that is income inequality that is so one-sided it's not funny. Why aren't they outraged over that? Why?
Carol, is the message lost?
Probably. What besides that, what is the message? I mean, really and truly, what is the message? I think you're basing so much of this, and all of them are basing so much of this on emotion, and they're not really looking at the actual numbers. If they're talking about police brutality, more police have been killed by the minorities than the other way around, and that's been documented. And all of these, you know, Black Lives Matter and all that, hands up, don't shoot, that started during the Obama administration, really. But you never saw these kinds of demonstrations, not to this degree, not to this effect, not to Antifa, et cetera. What is the change? Well, the change is we have Trump in the White House, and that was not supposed to happen. And so it has been a catalyst for a lot of these things to gin up a lot of discontent. Now, Colin Kaepernick, he still doesn't have a job. How is that winning? Besides that, this is not a First Amendment issue. This is, do the billionaire owners of these clubs, are they willing to risk a loss of income, which is happening, apparently? Viewership, if the viewership goes down, then the contracts with the TV stations and the cable networks also go down. The billionaires lose money. In Louisiana, you review the contract that Tom Benson has fleeced the taxpayers of this state to get over a 15-year period. Forbes did an excellent outline of it. It amounts to what we know, over $400 million. And Warren is right. They come in and they extort these deals out of local communities and out of states because of the gleam of having an NFL team. Well, that gleam is now off the little franchises there, because people are really getting fed up with this kind of ridiculous attitude. These people are millionaires fighting billionaires, and the people who are left holding the bag are the people. You try to buy a ticket to an NFL game and take the kids and buy some popcorn, whatever. You're spending some real money. Now, if the owners, this is really a branding issue. If you want to destroy the brand, these owners have a right in their contract. The NFL rulebook states national anthem must be played prior to every NFL game. All players must be on the sideline for the national anthem. Quote, during the national anthem, players on the field and bench areas should stand at attention, face the flag, hold helmets in their left hand, and refrain from talking, and the home team should make sure the flag is in good condition. That's in the NFL rulebook. If they choose, they can be disciplined, but that's not necessarily a given. They may be disciplined, but they don't have to be. And so the owners are going to have to decide, do they want their brand destroyed by a bunch of spoiled brat millionaires?
So wrap this one up, Stafford, and then we'll move on to Trump.
So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Who's these people that you're referring to? These millionaires. Let's get specific about who you're referring to.
Most of the players, many of the players are millionaires, and the billionaires are the team owners.
Okay, and what did the billionaires?
Taxpayers are left holding the bag.
And what did the billionaires do? Billionaire team owners do with their millionaire employees? They stood in unison with them, right?
I don't care about that.
Okay. All right. So
they want to lose money and destroy their brand. People are fed up with the NFL, and they're fed up with ESPN.
Well, you're wrong about that, because the ratings are up.
With politics.
The ratings are up. The numbers are out. You know, Monday Night Football was up almost 60%. 60%. So this narrative that you're throwing out is completely wrong.
I don't know.
So let's go back to a couple other things.
I haven't seen those numbers.
Warren, you sat back and you said,
60%.
what are they complaining about? This country's great.
And
we shouldn't try to work to improve
throw around
things.
Numbers that they can't prove.
So we should accept the status quo and not try to make the world a better place.
You are completely wrong. I said we do have an imperfect country.
You're right, and we should strive to make it better. And here's the deal:
they're not trying to make it better.
If they were on their knee,
trying to make it better, why aren't they doing the things that they're out there protesting all during this election?
Listen. Antifa has nothing to do with the guys kneeling on the field.
By God,
if they were on their knees for
income inequality, the racism they're talking about, and the hate they're talking about, that's what they were screaming about all this time.
Let's make this very clear. If they were on their knees for veterans benefits, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Look.
Right?
Look. No, I don't know. And I don't know that it's true what you're saying about why they're on their knees and why they're
You don't speak for the veterans.
I think the veterans would be very upset with that.
You don't get to speak for the veterans.
All right, let's go back one more time. I want to move off of this topic. I can't stand it, but let's go back one more time. Does the name Dwayne Thomas mean anything to you?
It doesn't.
Dwayne Thomas was a member of the Dallas Cowboys who back in the early 70s would turn his back whenever they were doing such things as this. He was an item by himself, and it became a non-entity. He still played football, and he was very good, and he protested a few things by himself, and everybody just went on about it.
Right. This was going away until Trump opened his mouth.
No, it wasn't going away until
there
Trump
was less than 10 people protesting. It wasn't even brought up anymore. Listen, up until 2009, the players were in the locker room for this. The players didn't even come out for the national anthem.
Look,
and what happened?
If you want
what happened? The Fed showed on the broadcast. The national.
That is 100% true.
2009. That was when they were.
That is 100% true. And in 2011, the federal government started investing in acts of valor, or the flag on the field, the flybys with the Blue Angels. All this stuff started happening in 2011.
That did not start in 2011.
They had some for other events.
It may have been.
But the heavy marketing for the National Guard and the United States Army, the United States Marines, the United States Navy started happening in 2011. It is bought and paid for recruiting. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Decades, Stafford. They've been doing that for decades.
Okay, let's wrap this up right here. I will say this. According to Nielsen, Monday Night Football was up 7% over the week before. The 63% number was year to year. So the same game last year, up 63%.
Now, I heard
week to
news
week,
yesterday
7%.
that said completely the opposite over the last 7 to 8 years.
I'm glad we went to the source, Nielsen.
Overall, the NFL is apparently looking at
without me for about 15 years.
apparently about a 3% rise just in the season. But as far as the actual Cowboys game, year to year and then week to week.
Now,
So
I'm talking about overall NFL.
this is just specifically Monday Night Football.
Okay.
I
Specifically,
think
the
maybe
Cowboys.
some
week
people
to
did
week?
tune in to see what the
specifically
Cowboys would
week
do.
to week was
Okay.
up 7%.
Yeah, I
So,
think that's possible
I would
because a
like
lot
to
of people
know-
would tune in to see what the Cowboys were going to do. I heard
Quote
people
Mark
talking about
Twain.
that.
I would like to know in a 10-year gap, has NFL football become more popular or less popular?
Oh, definitely less.
Mm-hmm.
It's
You
been
think so?
9 years. 9 years specifically.
May
it's
I
been.
quote
Because
Mark Twain?
we've added more teams.
Let's we'll
May I
wrap this
quote
up. Then we're
Mark
going to move on.
Twain?
Okay.
There are lies, damn lies, and
And
statistics.
statistics.
May we move on?
All right, it's 7:28 now. We're going to continue with the panelists next here. Obviously, there are some opinions. I'm happy that there are different opinions. We maybe take a couple of your phone calls too.
I do want to also point out about, I heard a lot of people say yesterday, excuse me. I read on Facebook yesterday, so.
So
you
not
know,
really.
that's the
Oh,
Yeah.
geez.
No, but people expressing their opinion that they were frustrated that they just wish the protest was not during the national anthem. And one lawmaker in the news, Valerie Hodges, said she understands all sides, but she thought people doing it during the national anthem wasn't respectful. But she also says in the sound bites that she understands why they're protesting, what they're protesting for, and she said people should be protesting. She just doesn't like it in the
There's a
national
lot of people
anthem.
who
I
say
have a
that.
quick
So there's that, too.
clarification, please. Thank you. AP, Nielsen football ratings off 11% this year through the 3 weeks.
Through the year, yes,
3 weeks, first 3 weeks.
that is correct.
Off
7%?
11%.
7%
Yeah.
Monday to Monday.
That has absolutely nothing to do with the
63
protest.
year to year and 11% down, which is around, I want to say it was 9 to 13% year to year over the
Right.
last 9 years.
It's funny because I've heard a lot of really great football fans say that they're off of ESPN too because television, especially because of so much of it being
ESPN has
politicized.
been
They want to
politicized,
they
yeah.
want to watch
So,
football and have fun. They don't want to hear.
Warren, I want to start with this one on you. Kenny Havard, another lawmaker, talked about the Saints and taxpayer funding. I'm just kind of interested in you guys as the panelists, your thought about that. What we give in taxpayer funding, is it too much? Do we really get the return here? Carol touched on it a bit.
Yeah, and I also want to add to that, how many times has the funding issue been discussed?
Yeah,
in
it's come up a
Louisiana
lot.
with the Saints.
Warren, let's
It's been
start with you
wild.
on this one.
I'm going to go back to a Federal Reserve paper that was done
Absolutely.
probably
I've quoted
about
that many times.
17, 18 years ago, I think. And I sent it to Moon Kafan one day. And what it was saying in there, and the statistics bear it out, that in most cases, a professional sports franchise is a net loss to a city. And they went through it and explained every bit of it. And not only that, but they said that hosting the Super Bowl is basically a net loss to a city. And that, then when it came down to the Saints, where they wanted a new Superdome or whatever it was, they wanted $750 million. And at the exact same time, there was a figure thrown out that said that to repair all the streets in New Orleans and do some of the things to repair the infrastructure that really needed to be done would cost $750. No, I don't think it was that much. I think it was more like $500 million. And so my point was the Saints said, we don't get our way, we're going to move. And at the same time, Alabama was putting money into some economic development, which lured in Mercedes-Benz or BMW plants or whatever.
It was Toyota.
And do what?
It was Toyota.
Yeah, but they also, I think, do Mercedes there.
Okay.
So anyway, and Mississippi had the big Nissan plant that came in there. That was $1 billion investment. So my point was, yeah, let Louisiana go ahead and put $750 million or whatever it is into a new stadium for the Saints, and that way the people in Alabama and Mississippi who are making pretty good money can afford the tickets to come down there. And my real point was, the New Orleans Saints don't like Louisiana, and we're not paying them enough or giving them enough. They can move to Memphis, they can move to Biloxi, Mississippi, or they could go to hell as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Carol.
I think he might be passionate
Yeah,
about it.
I was kind of waiting for more, but all right, Carol, taxpayer
Well,
money.
it's always a matter of numbers, isn't it? And who wags the dog in the legislature? The New Orleans delegation. Every time they've tried to reform, and I can tell you because my husband was in the middle of it, trying to get some reforms into New Orleans, and it never worked. And what was the word that was thrown at him? Big honky racist. And that was what was always thrown at my husband trying to get some reform into the state of Louisiana. Now, over and over again, Tom Benson has fleeced this state. And, the bread and circuses whole thing, everybody loves the Saints and all that great stuff. And, yeah, that's wonderful to have an NFL franchise there. But what is the cost? As Warren said, and I've seen those presentations, we had a Federal Reserve governor here talking about it. And the question was, at the time of that controversy, what is the economic return for a sports franchise, a major league sports franchise, to a city or state? And he said about the same as a mid-sized department store. That's it. And what we put out, we don't give to those mid-sized department stores. What we give to the Saints is they have their own taxing district. As far as I know, it's still called the Stadium District, and they get an additional 4 or 5, however many cents. I don't know, it may have changed since then. Tom Benson has sweetened the deal so many times. Then he went and bought the Pelicans, thanks to all the money he got from the state for the Saints and the Superdome and all that. And he has Benson Towers. He has state leases that go into his office building. I'm telling you, that deal is sweetened any number of ways. Anybody who wants to look at the numbers can go to the Forbes article. It was either in 2013 or 2015, and they did a complete analysis. And it is a net loss to the state of Louisiana.
I want to say, most of the money, as we know, and Stafford, we'll go to you to wrap this up, and then we'll come back to talk about healthcare. Most of the money is not in revenue from taxes, even ticket sales or anything. It's all merchandise. I mean, it's all franchising and putting things out like that.
Right.
Does this affect that?
I think the people burning their merchandise is silly. Look, so let's take a step back. First off, the man who proposed that legislation is the same man who got up in the House and said that we should propose weight limits for strippers. Okay, and age limits. I don't know if you remember that.
As a bad joke.
Yeah, really
a really bad joke.
Yeah, really bad joke. That
what an idiot.
That is beyond
Sorry,
just.
I mean, but that was awful. It wasn't a funny joke.
It
you
is.
know?
It is.
I mean, come on, dude. Don't say that in public.
And that's what we're dealing with in the state legislature. So I want to take a step back. Look, Donald Trump sued the NFL when he created the USFL. All right, he won an antitrust lawsuit against him, and his judgment was $1. Okay. So the guy's got a history of anger with the NFL. Now, let's also take a step back. He's called McCain a coward for getting captured, okay? He's attacked a Gold Star family.
But this was about tax breaks. I didn't think it was about Trump.
When you want to talk about it, you can talk about it, but now it's my turn to talk about it, okay? So he attacked a Gold Star family for supporting Hillary Clinton. He got 5 deferments for bone spurs, okay? So for that man to sit back and try to tell America what a patriot is disingenuous and dishonest, okay? So let's talk about who are patriots, right? Our soldiers are patriots, right? Our teachers are patriots, right? I believe everybody in this room is a patriot, right? And the anthem is a symbol of our ideals, as is the flag, right? And I always caution people about worshiping symbols, right? Worship the ideals that those stand for. And I believe that the people who are taking a knee on the field are saying that the ideals that those things stand for aren't being held across the board for everybody. It's a nonviolent protest. It's a silent protest. And how else would you want them to protest? Okay? I've heard a lot of idiots come out and say, don't do it at work. What other platform do these guys have? And they're doing it non-violently. And so who are we, as people who respect the Constitution, to sit back and tell them when they can exercise their constitutional rights?
Nobody's telling them that.
Because there's no clock on there that says, hey, you have to do it off after hours. Okay? This is a free speech issue. These guys have the same rights as everybody else, and I support their right to do it.
Warren, wrap this one up for us, please.
They absolutely have the right to do it, but to say that you don't have, to say that you can't do something when you're at work, that is the most ludicrous thing I've ever seen. People can fire you. If you're an employee, they can fire you.
But it's up to the boss, right?
Fire him and pay him.
It's up to the boss.
That's what you get to do. You can fire him, and then you can pay him.
Then you're just sitting there saying that they can't do that, and we can't criticize them for doing that.
You're going to lose a First Amendment lawsuit.
Nobody cares about that. We're not saying that they don't have a First Amendment right.
Nobody cares about that. Nobody cares about that. There's 250 people that kneeled in unison, and you're going to tell me that nobody cares about that?
I'm so sick and tired of listening to this whole thing. Can we move on?
Yeah, really.
When it's your show. I do like it. We're going to wrap this topic up, and we'll talk about Graham Cassidy next. Do you want to wrap this one up?
I've always said that the First Amendment is to protect ugly speech, especially the speech we do not agree with. That is not the point here. They have every right to do that. But I will say they're only hurting themselves, and the owners are a bunch of weasels if they don't hold their employees to account for destroying their brand.
It is 7:40. We got to move on here. We're going to talk about Graham Cassidy, where we go next with healthcare and the issues there, as it is a biggie. Good morning. Well, of course, we'll take your phone calls. Lots to talk about today. 232-1542. I was telling Bernie, it's funny. Within a 20-hour span, you had the same exact people on the same exact networks saying one day, it's not dead. We can do it without Rand Paul. It's not dead. And then the next day had to come out and say, well, we're not having a vote because we don't have the votes.
Yeah, they
could do it without Rand Paul. They can't do it without Mitch McConnell.
So, Carol, where do we go next with this? Is this something we're going to see taken care of in Trump's first term?
Let me put it this way. Everybody reads the numbers. Those guys are scared of their own shadow. That is why McConnell didn't even bring it up, not even for a procedural vote, to proceed with the debate. No, he didn't even bring it up for that. What are they all looking at? The midterm elections. That's basically what it comes down to. The total misunderstanding of this piece of legislation has really doomed it. Rand Paul, over the years, has wanted a federalism to come back into our public life, into our legal, into our lawmaking, et cetera. And this was sort of a nod to federalism by putting the control back to the states with little sweeteners from the federal government. But until you get a handle on that, and why were the governors, especially the governors who expanded Medicaid, they're against it. Why? Because they can't print money. They know the feds can, and they'd rather have that in that little, ball of wax in the federal government's hands because they can print the money and kick the can down the road until you get to this point in time when everything is collapsing, including Obamacare. And I think they're looking at that too. Why don't we just let it collapse and then come back and try to start over with maybe a more free market approach to health care. This government control of health care, it ain't working. It just takes a matter of time until it all hits the fan, and it's happening now with Obamacare collapse. Because why? Because it's illegal to continue the subsidies.
Do you think that the pretty public opinions of like American Medical Association, all those other organizations that came out against it, do you think that had an effect on, because think about it, the medical industry lobby is very strong in D.C.
Yes, it is.
Do you think that kind of had an effect with the Republicans?
Let me say this. The AMA represents, do you know how few doctors the AMA represents?
Well, I'm just saying, just in general. I mean,
most doctors don't trust the AMA and don't belong to the AMA. You talk to a lot of the doctors around here, they don't belong. So the AMA doesn't necessarily speak for doctors. This whole thing, it's everybody looking to line their pockets. All of it. They did it with Obamacare. Why did the insurance companies, they kind of stood back and they kind of licked their lips and were waiting for all those new customers that were going to be forced to them by the mandates of Obamacare. One of the big things of the Graham Cassidy bill that was good was eliminating the employer and individual mandates.
Stafford, there was a town hall that happened between Bernie Sanders and another lawmaker. I don't know her name. I apologize. But Bernie Sanders really arguing the single-payer side. Is that who it was? Okay, Klobuchar. And then you had the other side with the Graham Cassidy side with it. Does this debate continue at that level? Do you see any change in where things are going?
First off, passing this through budget reconciliation is anti-democratic. Okay,
as they did Obamacare.
Listen, I'm going to ask you to let me make some points, please, Carol. Okay, so you just got done saying that you can't trust a state with money, with the saints, but then you're going to come back and say that we should let states have all the money for health care. That is absolutely illogical, and I just don't understand how you can live with that amount of that lack of integrity in that argument.
There are restrictions on the amount that's sent back.
Listen, Graham Cassidy was a bad bill. It's been a bad bill. Fixing Obamacare is the option. And you know what's hilarious? Mike Pence came out and said, if we don't pass Graham Cassidy, we're going to end up with Canada-like health care. Oh, my God. How horrible would that be to be able to go to the doctor when you need to go to the doctor and not have to worry about the bills and everything else and ruining your credit, or be able to go to the dentist when you need it, or getting your eyes fixed when you need it? How terrible would that be to pay a little bit more in taxes and to get your health care covered? So, look, Cassidy has proven that he is not a man of integrity. He said I actually supported him big time when he was going around saying that he intends to fulfill the tenets of what Trump said on the campaign trail. When he said he was going to find a way to get health care for more people for less money with better coverage, I sat back and I went, hey, you know what? Maybe I was wrong about Cassidy, because what I saw on the trail from him earlier, I didn't agree with. But when he came out and said that, I went, man, this guy's really, if he's a doctor, if he can find a way, I support him. And when he could have gotten done the first time, what did he do? He proposed a bad bill. And I will tell you something. People have been beating up John McCain over this. One of the most amazing things I've seen was when Lindsey Graham got asked about his vote, and he was moved to tears. He goes, I'll never judge my friend over the way he votes. He's a man of integrity, and that's why we're friends. And we're losing that as a nation, and we're losing that in government, right? Nothing should be pushed through the House or the Senate through the reconciliation process. To have a 51-49 on anything makes it weak, okay? Let's get back to the way it's supposed to be. 60-40, 2/3 in the House.
Warren?
I don't know that it was ever supposed to be 60-40, 2/3 in the House. I think that was a rule that was put in a few years ago over something. You know, let's talk about, you bring up the fact that John McCain's a man of integrity. By God, for everything you can tell me about where he's a man of integrity, I can bring you 10 things that said he is not. John McCain is the biggest fraud that ever was. I mean, he's a sociopath. Just go look at what John McCain has actually done. Just go look at it. And then come back and tell me he's a man of integrity. You know, this deal about the Obamacare and all that, I, for one, am not opposed to national health care. I've said that all the way going back. But if you want to do it, then we need to do it right. And I go back to what one of my friends said, who's no longer with us, who was a practicing physician, a surgeon, and a hospital administrator and all that, said, why don't we take the time to sit down and actually have a conversation about it, which the people in Washington don't want to do. Now, Stafford brings up the fact about we want to trust the state more than the federal government. And I asked anybody, where do you think you get your best accounting for your money and the best deal? Through the federal, state, or local government? And I think most everybody will say that the local government's probably going to do it best. After that's going to be state. The worst stewards of our money is going to be the federal government. That's why we're $100 trillion in debt.
We're not $100 trillion in debt.
When you take in everything we owe, all the unfunded, all the liabilities, yes. All of it, we're well over $100 trillion, or right at it, 90 trillion or something like that.
That's Michael Lunsford math.
Not Michael Lunsford math, it's math. What you're talking about is just the debt that we have, what we've borrowed through
the. You
look at all the rest of it. Social Security and all of that stuff. It is way up there.
When's the last time we had a surplus?
The last time when Republicans controlled Congress completely, and we had a quasi-Republican in the White House.
Right.
We had a semi-conservative in the White House by the name of Bill Clinton.
And how high were taxes?
No surplus. There was no surplus.
How high were income
by
taxes?
The way.
I don't know.
Very.
Meaning what?
And we tried to cut our way to prosperity with this concept of.
They were not very. When Newt Gingrich
we tried to cut our way to prosperity, meaning what?
Cut taxes, thinking that if the top had more money, that it would trickle down.
No. What you're talking about is that we had when we went in there when Newt Gingrich and them took over, and they went in there and started trying to get spending under control and all that. We wound up with a surplus. And then what happened after that with the 2000 election is when the liberals took over, meaning the main liberal that got elected to the White House and brought in his evil Vice President Dick Cheney, and they turned around.
Oh, gosh.
And
I got 30 seconds, Warren. Go ahead.
And they turned around and just opened the spigots and said, it's our time to spend money.
And the fact is, the main reforms that remember, they passed welfare reform twice under Newt Gingrich, and Clinton vetoed it both times. At the third time, he knew he was in trouble. They had taken over Congress, and he went along with it. And there was no surplus. He had reduced the national debt. But if you look on Treasury.gov, which I did, there was no surplus. It was just that the national debt had been reduced thanks to his increase in Social Security taxes.
All right, we have to
Thank
wrap
you,
it
Mr.
up
Clinton.
there. Wingin' a Wednesday, each and every Wednesday, brought to you by our friends over at Service Cadillac. Oh, by the way, you can still buy my car.
Yay!
It's a 2016 Cadillac XT5. It's white on the outside. It's creamy like butter on the inside. It has a sky view sunroof
like
in it.
butter.
Hey, go see my friends over at Service Cadillac a little bit later on today.
Happy birthday, Layden.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate that, guys. 7:56 now at News Talk 96.5
Winners.
KFL.